Thanks for joining in to another Dolphins podcast. The Miami Dolphins have their first chance at a winning streak of 2024. Wow, things we didn't believe we'd be saying in mid-November. The Dolphins are 7-point favorites this weekend against the Las Vegas Raiders, and I have Kat and Houtz joining me to preview this weekend's game. But before we dive into the Raiders, Kat, I wanted to get your thoughts about last week. My biggest mistake, and I think Josh might agree with me, we overlooked that Rams defensive line. There's no doubt about that. But safe to say, I was kind of impressed to see the offense, not let one weakness or one strong performance derail the entire game.
Well, I think a lot of people with the Rams defensive line think just because they lost Aaron Donald that they're automatically not going to be great at rushing the passer. And really, they've been fantastic getting to the quarterback this year. And they were against the Dolphins in the last game too, and thankfully the Dolphins offensive line, it wasn't a squeaky clean game, but they were able to hold defenders off of Tua long enough for the Dolphins to make an impact, especially on third down.
Josh, any final thoughts about the Rams before we dive into the Raiders?
No, I mean, again, I think we talked about it. I'm just glad that Chop Robinson kind of showed up. I think he had, 5 pressures according to Next Gen Stats, 6, I think PFF, but I'm glad he stepped up because we did see Jared Verse have an impact. So, again, that was a tough matchup. Surprised the Dolphins came out on top, to be completely honest, but ready to see how we can move forward. Like Calais Campbell says, to create a wildfire, it only takes one spark.
The Raiders are heading to Miami after their bye week. I believe they've lost 5 straight games. They're 2-7 on the year. The all-time record, the Raiders lead it 21-20, and there is a tie in there. The Miami Dolphins have won 3 of the last 5 meetings, with the most recent being a 20-13 win in November of 2023. That game, I think, is very interesting because as we start digging into this game, guys, right before we came on the air, something I thought, or I said, famous last words, is this is an opportunity. The Miami Dolphins are 7-point favorites. This is a game they should win. It's the 1 p.m. You're at home against a lesser opponent, traveling all the way across the country. But just last year, these teams played, and it was right when Miami was picking up steam, right? 20-13 win over the Raiders. They made a lot of mistakes in that game. It was only a 7-point win. Ket, do you feel that Miami should be able to extend, kind of be at arm length away from the Raiders for most of this game? Or do you see this being closer to what we saw last year where, yes, the Dolphins won it, but maybe a little closer than we might have expected?
Yeah, that was an ugly win last year. It was 20-13. It was Jalen Ramsey. I believe that was his first game with the team. Had 2 interceptions. Offense got stuck in the mud for 3 out of the 4 quarters. And, it was a game that you felt queasy the entire time. No, I mean, they're 7.5-point favorites this year, and they are definitely picking up some steam here. It's not just a game that this alone isn't a game the Dolphins should just win. You've got to win 3 of the next 4 games easy, and probably 4 of the next 4. That's the reality of starting 2-6. It's starting to feel a little bit like 2021 again, where when the Dolphins actually put themselves in a bigger hole, they started 1-7, and then they ran off 7 in a row, I believe, and then they lost one of the last games to the Titans, and then that was it. They've got their work cut out for it. But when you look at the 3 of the next 4 games, the Raiders, the Patriots, and the Jets at home, 3 of the next 4 games, you've got to win those.
Yeah, and I mean, we're sitting here and I feel like there's such promise, right? And it's crazy. We're sitting here 3-6. You mentioned them going on a roll a few years back. So why not them? But I feel like we're just setting ourselves up for that inevitable, letdown. But in this matchup against the Raiders, Gardner Minshew starting, as we'll talk about. I mean, I do think this is that game where the Dolphins can get right, especially in a week where, there's so much noise about being soft and this, that, and the other thing. Go out there and just put the smackdown on a Raiders team that is coming off a bye and, is hungry to win a game.
The defense is really starting to gain an identity. I think we really saw what having a pass rush can do for the entire unit. You see Anthony Weaver get his first interception in 4 years. Kat, you mentioned Jalen Ramsey, and that's where I want to begin this conversation because he popped up on the injury report Thursday, and Mike McDaniel, pretty much it sounded like he was dying. He was like something that came up during practice. We'll see how it plays out. I don't rule him out. I don't rule out warriors like him. He'll do what he's able to do to play. So all of a sudden, it wasn't just limited in practice Thursday. It was he'll need his warrior type attitude to play on Sunday. So, Kat, this is a bit of a surprise, but I mean, when you think of this identity of this defense, you think about this Raiders offense that doesn't have a lot of playmakers. This felt like a game where you kind of have Jalen Ramsey being that chess piece all over the field, just a difference maker.
Right, and where you'd miss him most here is playing more in the slot and going heads up against Brock Bowers when the opportunity presents itself. I mean, Brock Bowers, 57 catches, 580 yards through 9 games. I believe 57 catches through the first 9 games is an NFL record. So you're talking about that's the main mismatch there, or that's where we're going to miss Ramsey the most, because on the outside you've got Jacoby Myers, familiar name to Dolphins fans, used to play for the Patriots, and also the speedster Trey Tucker. But not a lot of talent there at wide receiver ever since they traded Devontae Adams. So this is a game that probably won't hurt him as much on the outside, but not having Ramsey being able to move around like the chess piece you mentioned, that's what'll hurt more.
And maybe it's because I was, we were all kind of transitioning to bluer skies, but I kind of missed this yesterday. So when I saw it today, I was like, oh man, same old Dolphins, cursed as we always are. But Jalen Ramsey's a fighter. He's going to try to be out there as Tyreek Hill's fighting. I guess I just continue to see, we're a game away from the season kind of ending. And then maybe these guys aren't out there anymore, right? They're hanging things up and getting better for next season. So such a interesting way this last few weeks are going to play out, this last half of the season. And again, they're playing a Raiders team that they should be able to beat him even without Jalen Ramsey, like Brian said.
Brock Bowers is the center of the entire operation here. 10 yards per catch, 60 yards per game. Over half of his yards are yak. Kat, just real quick, who do you see going, if you wanted to put a hat on a hat there, just someone to cover up Brock Bowers? Not necessarily let's prevent him from catching the ball, but let's not let a 12-yard reception turn into a 42-yard reception if Ramsey can't go.
Without Ramsey, I don't think you'll see anybody on him the entire time. I think there'll be a lot of zone-heavy concepts going up against him. Basically, don't let him not necessarily get over the top of the defense. He's not like a Kyle Pitts or anything like that, but being able to outmuscle a defender, break a tackle, and take it the distance, that's more of his style. So, yeah, I think that it's got to be a team effort against Brock Bowers. I think he had a potential. If Ramsey plays and Ramsey is healthy, you have the potential to use him on Bowers, but other than that, it's got to be a team effort.
There's only one Jalen Ramsey, but I mean, it's the same thing, right? The way defenses are taking away the Tyreek Hills and Jalen Waddle, find a way to take away Brock Bowers and make the Jacoby Myers, the Trey Tuckers, and some of those other guys beat you.
The Raiders currently ranked 25th in the NFL at 18.7 points per game. They are the NFL's worst rushing offense at 77 yards per game. And that's why entering the Week 10 bye week, entering the Week 10 bye week, they fired offensive coordinator Luke Getsy. Scott Turner was named the interim offensive coordinator. And this is a bit of a revenge game, as Joe Philbin is the new offensive line coach. When you talk about Brock Bowers, like a new offensive system, I don't think it's going to be too complicated to integrate a tight end, right? Just have those easy routes for him to get involved with the offense. But how do we feel about keeping up with Jacoby Myers, keeping up with Trey Tucker, who can really beat you with just one catch? I think Tucker's sitting with 25 receptions on 44 targets and has 1 touchdown on the year. Jacoby Myers, a bit more of a possession guy with 39 receptions, 430 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Not only will the Dolphins potentially, isn't Jalen Ramsey's availability is up in the air, but also Kendall Fuller, he's going to miss this game after suffering his second concussion with the Miami Dolphins. So you mentioned Jacoby Myers, Trey Tucker. Kat, how comfortable do you feel about, a Storm Duck-led secondary on the boundary?
Very comfortable, because
nice.
The Raiders' offense sucks. So, look, the Dolphins have found many ways to humiliate us this year, and I'm thankful that this past Monday was a great break from that. And look, I also too, and we can talk about this, but I like that David Long is not here anymore. I like that Raheem Mostert didn't get a carry. I like that there's actually accountability now, and that I did not say that 2 or 3 weeks ago. But if we revert back, and here in Miami, we're talking about Joe Philbin revenge game, Norv and Scott Turner coming back. The Raiders running backs averaged 3.3 yards a carry. Trey Tucker and Jacoby Myers, 10 yards a catch? I mean, if you can't beat this team, just turn the lights out.
Famous last words.
And now we all picture Philbin Squidward looking ass getting the Gatorade shower right at the end of this game, and we're all just like, oh man. So another name we got to throw out there, and we talked about it on the last pod, Jake, but Ethan Bonner, I heard he was working out, or we all kind of saw he's working out after practice with River Craycraft. So, could he step up in that absence? But I agree with Kat. I feel pretty comfortable with those guys behind Kendall Fuller and, even Jalen Ramsey if he's inevitably out like it does seem.
Something Josh and I talked about a little bit earlier this week, but Kat, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I thought I was overreacting a little bit, like live tweeting like the Cardinals game and even the Colts game. Like I felt like I was overreaching this, like, Jesus, David Long looks so bad. Were you surprised to see the Dolphins go ahead and release him?
Not really. I mean, I think the writing was on the walls simply because, I mean, when you see Anthony Walker didn't just start last game. He played 69 out of 70 snaps.
Yep.
And Jordan Brooks played 70 out of 70 snaps. You've also got Duke Riley and Channing Tindall on the roster. So, no, I wasn't surprised because David Long's also a player, too, where I believe he was scheduled to be a free agent after this year. And he's also not a guy that plays a lot of special teams. So if you're not putting him out on the field in traditional defense, what are you really doing with him? And I think it really sends a message to the rest of the players that you're expected to go out there and produce. And if not, you may not find yourself on this team. And I had a problem with that with Mike McDaniel for a long time. And I think he's starting finally to overcome it. Is it too late? That remains to be seen.
I think that's my favorite part about all this. Like you said, just him, for lack of a better word, saying, we're going to send you packing. They did bring in Tyrell Dotson. What were your thoughts on that, Kat? I don't know if we have it in the rundown, but quick initial thoughts on him. I mean, I feel like getting him at this point in the season, switching him out David Long, that's a hell of a move.
Yeah, I was stunned that he was cut because Tyrell Dotson actually does have experience on special teams. So getting him in here, he's when he played for the Bills, he was a really good player. And I thought he was going to be a big part of that Seahawks defense, and he's got a lot of range. So that was the big thing with David Long. Small and slow does not work. And he wasn't the slowest guy, but he did not have the range to cover running backs, to cover tight ends. He would come down in the hole, and if you can't cover and you can't play the run, I don't know what you're doing here.
Beautifully said. One name I just want to mention real quick. I don't want to spend any time, but Patrick McMorris, he's practicing in full. You mentioned special teams. He's someone that I just like to see get a couple plays. And guys, I mean, Kat, you laid it out perfectly. But when you think about this, Alexander Madison, 92 carries for 301 yards, 3.3 yards per carry. And you have a Raiders offense. I think they have two centers who haven't practiced this week that are dealing with injuries. And you have Zach Sealer back in the mix. You have Calais Campbell being awesome. That's the matchup where the Dolphins should be able to just build off of right away. Sealer and Campbell in the middle, stack everything on top of that. I think that's the secret, pretty obvious sauce for success to beating the Raiders.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this, though. The Raiders' offensive line has played better the last couple of weeks, and big reason for that was my favorite player in this past draft, and that was Jackson Powers-Johnson, center/guard, and he was injured for the first part of the year, and then he came back, struggled his first couple of games, but has done really well the last few. So, but around him, you've got Jackson Powers-Johnson at center, you've got Colton Miller at left tackle. Their guards have overachieved, Dylan Parham and Jamon Meredith the last couple of weeks, and then they've got rookie DJ Glaze at right tackle. So, yeah, hypothetically, it's a matchup the Dolphins should win just by Calais Campbell and Zach Sealer alone against the interior of that line. But Jackson Powers-Johnson is coming on.
Yeah, he was one of all of our favorites, right? I think like every mock draft we had him in, we love that player. I think he wanted to be a Dolphin too, correct me if I'm wrong. But the defensive line for the Dolphins, I mean, I don't know how you guys felt, but Deshaun Hand, he was really showing up a lot last week. Again, Zach Sealer's been playing out of his mind next to Calais Campbell. So, yeah, I have no issue with the Dolphins matchup here. And again, it's one that we should win, but that's what gives me a little bit of hesitation and, just stamp it and go bet on the Dolphins upright.
Kat, I'm thinking back to our draft night podcast and just talking about Monday Night Football. How excited were you to see Chop Robinson really step up and show out, get to do the chop sack celebration, especially when Jared Verse is on that other side looking like a monster?
Yeah, 2 weeks in a row now, he's done well. And, if he's not getting pressures and getting into the backfield, then he's a useless player. And he's been getting pressures and getting into the backfield the last couple of weeks. Jared Verse Jared Verse wasn't available for the Dolphins, as we know.
Mm-hmm.
He just taken a few spots before. Would have been interesting if Jared Verse did make it to that spot. Would he have been the pick over Chop Robinson? I don't know. I tend to believe he would have. Yeah, but Verse is looking like defensive player or defensive rookie of the year right now, and Chop Robinson's coming on. But it's good to see because the Dolphins. This is the first positive thing that's happened for the Dolphins at the edge spot in almost a full calendar year. If you combine that with hopefully they get Bradley Chubb back in the next couple of weeks, that can make a huge impact on the defense.
And crazy enough, I think Quentin Bell was PFF's #1 rated edge rusher last week. Obviously, that's not something you're going to lean into and bank every week, but just having those opportunities where someone, hey, you have a little bit of a better matchup and you can take advantage of it. That's always a nice bonus. Josh, how about you give us your final thoughts here on the defense?
No, you guys touched on. I'm excited to see what Chop Robinson, stack them days, so to speak. And it was nice to see Quentin Bell step up because again, that was that player that everyone from camp, he's going to be this difference maker, and we just did not see it at all. So you're getting a lot of production there. When again, we're praying Bradley Chubb comes back. I don't know about you guys, but I'd hate to be that pessimist, but I just can't see him coming back.
Can you believe that Cameron Good, sorry, Cam, Mike McDaniel said Cameron Good's expected to come back sooner than Bradley Chubb. And I just remember, wasn't Good like carted off, had like a huge air cast on his leg, like stretchered off? If I remember correctly, I thought his looked worse definitely at the time.
Yeah, was that the Bills game or the Titans game on Monday night he got hurt? I think it was the Bills game.
I think it was the Bills game too.
Yeah, so he got that would have meant he got hurt 1 week after Chubb. And yeah, I thought it was more gruesome. So yeah, but yeah, it looked like it, but we've heard over the last couple of weeks how bad the Chubb injury was. So we'll see on that. And Cameron Good is somebody that's easy to forget because he was such a non-factor for 2 years. And then the minute he started coming on, I mean, like it's just par for the course for the edge position here for the last year. But it's promising to see that things are starting to look like they're turning around a little bit there. And one other thing on the defense, Kader Kohou continues to be one of my favorite players on the team. I think he keeps getting better. And Cam Smith, he struggled, but he hasn't struggled as badly as I thought. So I think that the future at this cornerback spot with Ramsey and with Kendall Fuller, 30 and over, still looks pretty bright.
Gotta end. If you missed yesterday's show, what Kader Kohou said about Deshaun Elliott was just absolutely perfect. Kader Kohou, when asked why Deshaun Elliott called the team soft, Kohou said, he's not here for a reason. I got no respect for it. I didn't think Deshaun was the toughest guy. Absolutely awesome from Kohou. So we got to absolutely give him his flowers. Flipping the coin, let's talk about the offense. The Miami Dolphins have scored at least 23 points in each of the last 3 games. Kat, it seemed like Monday Night Football felt like that Dallas Cowboys game. You're leaning on special teams a little bit. Jason Sanders had some big field goals. What was different, though? The Miami Dolphins, despite some ugly drives, were able to find the end zone twice, and that was ultimately a difference maker against the Rams.
Yeah, great comparison with the Cowboys game from last year when Sanders, I think, kicked 5 field goals. But anyway, there were big kicks. And, when the Dolphins were up 17-9, I think Sanders attempted a 53-yarder. And that was a pivotal moment in the game. I mean, you miss that kick, and the Rams have the ball with the momentum on Monday night, down 1 possession. I mean, he doesn't hit that kick to go up 20-9. Man, oh man, they're in big trouble there. And offensively on that drive, Tua spinning out of the way and finding Raheem Mostert for 25 yards. That's a big boy play. So a big offensive play followed by a 53-yard field goal to put the Dolphins up 2 possessions. Ultimately made the difference in the game.
And those are kicks that, every time Jason Sanders goes out there, we love to give him the money sign, but you're still holding your breath every single time. It's kind of like those Eagles games. I mean, you saw P-head Jake Elliott. He was, oh man, I know Eagles fans want to do away with him. So, I mean, I want to see this offense build on last week because we continue to hear how defenses are taking away Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill. I mean, I want to see them kind of break out despite all that, right? I mean, you are getting paid big time money. You shouldn't be getting bumped to oblivion completely out of the game plan. So I want to see this offense take the next step, but big money plays despite how bad that offense did look at times on Monday night.
And speaking of kickers, when is the last time an opponent what are opponents on the year against the Dolphins from 50-plus yards? I don't know that, but I'm going to look that up right afterward. Like, I swear it's the opposition starts at the 30 because the new touchback rules. It's like if they get to the 40-yard line, they got a chip shot now. Yep. Like can we just have a game where the opposing kicker goes like 2 for 4 from and isn't just drilling 57, 60-yard field goals. I don't know.
It just seems like just the visual of someone lining up to kick a field goal on the logo in the center of the field, like 10 years ago, I remember thinking like, yeah, that's like an indicator that no shot, like, yeah, good luck with that one. Like, get somebody back there to return it. It's absolutely insane to me how often we see it. Kat, I was sitting there because I think he drilled a 53-yarder that was called back for a penalty, and he had to try it from 58. I honestly thought he was going to drill it again, get called for another penalty and drill it from 63. So I'm right there with you. Tyler Bass the week before, man, it's been absolutely ridiculous. I wanted to get your guys' thoughts here on the offensive line, because I think we were feeling real good for the first 6-7 weeks of the season. There was a lot of continuity on that offensive line, but all of a sudden, Robert Jones is hurt. He's considered day-to-day with a leg injury. Austin Jackson done for the year. Kat, you starting to get queasy about this unit, or have we seen some pretty good things despite the issues like against the Rams?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, largely because we're a Teron Armstead injury away from really being in trouble. Yeah. And I don't mean to jinx it, but can Armstead last the entire year? And if not, is Patrick Paul ready? And then, Robert Jones nicked up. Aaron Brewer's phenomenal. I mean, what a great signing. Liam Eichenberg might actually be, I don't know, halfway decent. Not terrible.
Love it.
And a right tackle, Kendall Lamb, he struggled a little bit, but he was okay. And that's the big matchup. Kendall Lamb against Max Crosby in this game. And Max Crosby, unlike a lot of other defenders, he doesn't move around the defensive line. He will line up against right tackle in this game. So there's that. But also on the other hand, too, not to continue this wild goose chase, but at right, when Mike McDaniel over the last 3 years has been really good at when the opposing team has one really good defensive player, like with the Cowboys last year with Micah Parsons, like with when the Raiders came to town and it was Max Crosby. Mike McDaniel has done pretty good in those situations and making sure that player gets the attention that they need so that they don't wreck the game. Funny thing, too, is next to Max Crosby, if you look at the depth chart, you've got John Jenkins and Adam Butler as the defensive tackles.
Wow.
So to begin the year, they had Christian Wilkins, John Jenkins, and Adam Butler. I mean, just raiding the Dolphins' defensive middle of the Dolphins' defensive line from back in 2021.
Who will not be on that defensive line is Christian Wilkins. He is out indefinitely. He had foot surgery. Josh, you have some pretty good stats here about Lamb at right tackle. Do you want to share those?
Yeah, I thought Kat was going to touch on him, but he lined up 82.8% of his snaps are lined up at above the right tackle. So, yes, it's going to be Kendall Lamb versus Max Crosby all day long. He has generated a team-high 32 pressures and 6.5 sacks this season. It also said Lamb is allowing 5 pressures on 78 pass block snaps this season, which is 6.4%. However, from 2018 to 2023, Lamb allowed 12.2%, 11th among 248 players. That was all from Next Gen Stats. So huge matchup, and honestly, could be the key to the game, at least if you're the Raiders attacking that Miami Dolphins offense.
Kat, is there any worries about Lamb? Like, this is someone who admitted he's going to retire, and I think he's someone, too, like Armstead, the more they play, there's a chance, like, especially as it gets colder, football gets harder. If something happens with Lamb, who would be your next choice at right tackle? Isaiah Wynn, he's back in the mix. I kind of got yelled at on Twitter for this, but is he someone you'd maybe see playing right tackle after his time with the Patriots, or would you look elsewhere?
No, I think Patrick Paul would be the next guy up. It would be a big stretch, but, when you're down to your if the Dolphins got in this spot, if they were down to their third string right tackle, nobody you put in is going to be a great solution. Actually, you know what? Maybe Liam Eichenberg kicks out to right tackle.
I heard someone else say that too, actually, yeah.
That's been the only allure of Liam Eichenberg for the last 3 years, is that he's versatile. Now this is by far his best season, so let's hope that continues. But yeah, they do have a few options. We hope that these linemen stay healthy enough to at least hold the pocket for 3.5 seconds, because we've seen with Tua sometimes that's all that's needed.
Would you guys read like a 1,000-word story about Liam Eichenberg, just talking about how just his life and how he's so good at getting 15-yard penalties? I think I'd read maybe like 2,000, maybe 3,000 words about that.
I'd be down for it. I was going to ask you guys if you would start Isaiah Wynn at guard. Like, what are you going into this game? Robert Jones, you going to play him at guard, or would you give Isaiah Wynn a tip of the cap if Jones is even a little bit banged up?
Yeah, let's go with Wynn. see what he's got, because I think he's at least big enough to get in the way well enough. That's not probably the most eloquent way to say that, but
sounds nice to him.
I don't think Wynn. I think Wynn was a serviceable left guard when the Dolphins had him, a very middle of the pack left guard. That's fine. And I don't think he did anything special from an athletic standpoint. So he might be able to step in a lot quicker than people think and make an impact.
Lester Cotton actually played pretty well last week too, so it'll be interesting to see. I think key here is Miami picks one and sticks with it. I think continuity is going to be the key here moving forward, just making sure you have a stable group of guys. One thing I'm really hoping for this weekend, we're talking about the cornerbacks. We're saying, speaking of these injuries, I just want 30 points. You score 23 points or more over each of the last 3 weeks. Kat, what's the biggest thing Miami Dolphins can do on Sunday if they wanted to score 30 points for the first time this season?
I think what may prevent them from scoring 30 points is that the Raiders are pretty bad in run defense, right? Mm-hmm. They're averaging 4.67 yards a carry to opposing running backs, 5.25 to opposing starting running backs. And last game, Chase Brown ate them up for 120 yards on the ground against the Bengals. Then again, their pass defense isn't great either. 97.1 quarterback rating allowed. Joe Burrow carved him up last game. Bo Nix carved him up a few weeks ago. And you look at you look at him at cornerback. Jack Jones, again, another former Patriot, is their starting cornerback. Jacorian Bennett's out there too. So they do bring some speed on the outside at the cornerback spot, but not a lot of refinement. Jack Jones is a playmaker, had a pick 6 last week. Fun fact, in college, he actually robbed a Panda Express, too. I don't know if you guys know that.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. I was just going to say, let's see this offense. So don't turn the ball over. I want to see the Dolphins. I want to see Tua Tagovailoa play I don't want to say flawless game. I mean, we've seen him play very well with what the defense is throwing at him. But, whether it's some you know what I'm saying. Clean lane from Tua, and then let that open things up for Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and maybe we even see River Craycraft do something,
Jonnu Smith, it's incredible that I would have never thought that entering week 11 that Jonnu Smith's numbers would be better than Jalen Waddle. I think a lot of that has to do with someone like Snoop Huntley is going to look over the middle of the field more, and you can more friendly target a tight end than you could have fast as hell wide receiver. But Waddle's also been a little bit of a disappointment. Just speaking about that Rams defense and that secondary specifically, they are holding teams to 7 yards per attempt through the air, but they're number 24 in completion rate allowed. And Kat, that kind of speaks to what you were talking about, where they're going to maybe give you a bit of a soft shell, say that 10 times fast, on the boundary in the secondary, but they have the speed to come up and make tackles and really limit your mistakes.
Is this the Rams or the Raiders? I think you said Rams.
Oh, I meant the Raiders. I'm
okay,
sorry.
Okay. I think that this is more of a bend but don't break type of secondary, but a very also one that tries to be opportunistic as well. But really, they haven't had a lot. I mean, Jack Jones had the interception, the pick 6. He's been historically known as more of a playmaker as opposed to a down-to-down guy. Trevon Merrick leads their team with 2 interceptions, but they've only got 5 picks on the year. So, This isn't a defense that necessarily has gotten blown out of a lot of games, except for the last one where they let up 41 to the Bengals. Other than that, I take that back. They let up 34 to the Broncos and 32 to the Steelers too. So yeah, they're not that good. Not that good.
I was just saying they can get dink and dunk to death. That's kind of how Miami should go about this. I think it's going to be another scenario with the speed and the corners that I failed at really explaining. I think they have so much speed where you're not going to find Waddle or Tyreek deep, but you're going to be able to find the open read pretty easily against this defense and have a little bit of room for error as well. It kind of feels like that's what Tua will be working with.
Yeah, and what's helped with the dink and dunk is I like that they, for the most part, have committed to Jonnu Smith and Devon Achane being their 3rd and 4th options, because when you do that and you have decent protection, get the ball out of your hands quickly, and you've got those guys that you can scheme up one-on-one mismatches for, it's not a very difficult throw. And then from that point, if you've got Hill, Waddle, Jonnu Smith, Devon Achane as your top 4 guys. Now you can sprinkle in Malik Washington on an end around. You can get River Craycraft out there. You can use those pieces more creatively.
Yeah, talk dirty to me. I'm just glad you brought up Devon Achane because that is it's kind of setting up for that perfect matchup, like you said, Jake. They're going to kind of let us dink and dunk him to death, and Devon Achane, he's been absolutely a menace. I think I have a stat here with Tua in the lineup. He's had 70 more scrimmage yards per game and scored all 5 of his touchdowns with Tua at the helm. So Tua Tagovailoa loves to find Devon Achane, has all the faith in the world in him, and I think he's even out there running routes on 3rd down. So Devon Achane, again, we joked wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, whatever it was before the year. This dude is arguably maybe even the wide receiver 1, and we'll see. We'll see what he can do against the Raiders.
Is Raheem Mostert's snap count going to be similar to what we saw last week? He didn't have a single carry. He had 2 receptions. They both came on 3rd down. As long as the game's close, how do you guys see this food chain going? I'm fairly certain that I think Mostert's going to go back to his regular role. He got the slap on the wrist. I think he even stepped up and showed some things and played that role well, where I think he'll have his opportunities back.
Yeah, I think you're right. And Mike McDaniel at one point said that it was more about the game plan and the game flow, et cetera, et cetera. And then on the other hand, talked about accountability with fumbling. So I tend to believe that it was kind of that slap on the wrist. After the game, after the Bills game, I said, just cut this guy. I had more choice words than that. And that's probably an overreaction, but
That's why we're fans.
It was after the game and it's Twitter, so
Yeah, that does none of that counts. That's why we have it, right? Yeah, I think he's gonna. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say too. I think Jalen Wright had 5 carries for 3 yards last game. Yep. I don't blame him for that. So pretty sound argument for Mostert to get back in the lineup more this week.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. Just echo what you guys said because he did make some critical plays there towards the end of the game, and he's paid his due, I guess. But the next fumble, like you said, just eat him out there. You can go elsewhere.
Launching them to the moon. That's it. I think the tone of this podcast has given it away. So when we start the game predictions, Kat, let me put it this way. Are the Dolphins going to win by over under 16.5 points?
Yes, they're going to win by more than that. They're going to win by 28.
Let's hear the full prediction. I
feel a 38-10 Dolphins victory here. And I mean, quite honestly, I think the Raiders have largely given up on the season. Now, I hope it doesn't go completely the other way because you kind of got that placebo effect sometimes when you start firing a lot of guys throughout the week. Right. And then you come back and say, you know what? We got nothing to lose. We got, Joe Philbin promoted and Norv Turner back in the building. So I don't know. We'll see. But I don't think Gardner Minshew quite has the ability to come out and stun the Dolphins defensively, which is what would need to happen for this upset to happen.
Yeah, good prediction. I wrote down 34-13. You were talking about Minshew and Minshew mania and things like that. I was wondering, I'd be a little bit worried, though, if, they pull him and then they bring in Desmond Ridder, who just doesn't give an F, right? And he's out there just gunslinging, trying to do whatever he can with a new coordinator. So I just picture him carrying Philbin off the field like Shula, and it pains me so bad. I'm going to go 34-13. I'm not looking back. Dolphins going to lay the wood on them, and hopefully that's we can, get this thing going. I like that we come on here and be hyped up and optimistic, but I just hope we don't look like goofs next week.
Well, you don't want to lose 4 more games and just be miserable for a month. You're telling me you wouldn't want to have fun. Something we failed to talk about all day, I think, is how great Miami's red zone defense was against the Rams. So how about this? If Matthew Stafford can't find the end zone against the Dolphins, I don't think Gardner Minshew will. 31-9, they kick 3 field goals, and Liara spend the day happy. I hope that's the case. The Dolphins are in the spot, right? This is their prime chance to build some momentum. What did Calais Campbell say? We have it written at the top here. To create a wildfire, it only takes one spark. They have their spark, and it's time for a flat out. And, Josh, we might have to – but like the Dolphins, if they want to be a playoff team, they need to prove that if you're facing a bad team, you can just give a flat out shit kicking like that. Like I don't need to say it any other way. Like you need to come out and just show like we're the better team. There's no debate about it. Enjoy your flight back to Las Vegas.
Yeah, and as corny as it is, again, this whole week, Deshaun Elliott talking about soft and things like that. Go out there and show them you're not soft. You again, the blueprint was laid there against the Rams on Monday Night Football. That defense really looked good. So I'll put it together and beat the shit out of the Raiders.
Beautifully said. And that is it. That is all the time we have today on Another Dolphins podcast. Thank you all so much for joining us. If you have a moment, please hit that subscribe button, leave a rate, leave a review. That stuff helps others find the show, and we always appreciate it. One final note, we are also on the 560 WQAM YouTube channel. Want to leave us some comments there? We always interact with those, so we'll keep an eye out for those. Thank you all so much for listening. Let's hope we are back with the Victory Monday, but until then, fins up.
Fins up.